Hey guys, tonight we step into the world of the Byzantines, a place where ceremony was survival, and etiquette wasn't just manners, but an unspoken law that could decide who lived, who vanished, and who was quietly erased from the frescoes. You're about to walk through corridors lined with gold mosaics and guarded by men who never blink, where the air smells like incense, oil, and quiet ambition. You'll meet an emperor who rarely speaks but whose silence can move armies, and a palace so complex that even breathing wrong could make you a political statement. You probably won't survive this, at least not socially. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And, hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I always love seeing where in the world you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let us ease into tonight's journey together. You stand before the chalk gate, the bronze entrance to the great palace of Constantinople, and the first thing you notice isn't the gold mosaics or the carved saints, it's the silence. The kind of silence that tells you everyone inside already knows who you are, who you're pretending to be, and what you had for breakfast. You take one cautious step forward. A chamberlain in robes so stiff they could stand upright on their own raises a hand. He doesn't speak. He just stares, assessing your rank, your title, your entitlement to step 1 inch closer. The Byzantines were masters of ritualized hesitation. Every pause, every bow, every flicker of a gaze was part of a code centuries in the making. In the Byzantine court, the emperor is not a man, he is a performance. To see him is to step onto a stage where you play a role scripted long before you were born. If you stumble, you don't just embarrass yourself, you insult God's chosen ruler on earth. That's not ideal for your long-term career prospects. A eunuch glides toward you, expressionless. He is draped in white silk that gleams like moonlight on marble. Eunuchs were the empire's secret backbone, educated, meticulous, and utterly loyal, since, well, they had fewer distractions than most. He gestures for you to follow, and your sandals click softly against mosaics that depict endless victories, angels, and the occasional well-fed lion. As you walk deeper into the palace, the air thickens. You pass one hall, then another, each more dazzling, and somehow more suffocating, than the last. You notice no one turns their back to you, but they don't quite look at you either. The rule here: no direct eye contact with power unless invited. Historians still argue whether this was genuine reverence or simply a clever way to avoid treason charges if someone's expression twitched at the wrong moment. You pause before a massive set of doors carved with peacocks. Beyond lies the chrysotraklinos, the golden throne room. You've heard stories of how ambassadors from the west would faint from awe, or possibly heat stroke, upon entering. You brace yourself as the eunuch pushes the doors open. Light floods the chamber. The ceiling glitters with gold tesserae, the walls shimmer with depictions of saints and victories, and in the center, elevated on 7 marble steps, sits the emperor cloaked in purple, unmoving, unreal. Even from here, he doesn't seem entirely human. Purple, by the way, is more than a color here, it's a claim to divinity. Only the imperial family can wear it. The dye, extracted from tiny murex shells, cost more than silver, gold, and possibly your entire village combined. To wear purple uninvited was to invite exile, or worse, a polite accident involving a convenient staircase. Your guide bows, and you follow. Slowly. The bow must be exact, deep enough to signal humility, shallow enough not to imply servitude. Byzantine etiquette was mathematical. There were documented degrees of bowing, each corresponding to rank, distance, and mood. Somewhere in a dusty codex, a scribe once recorded an actual table of bow angles. You're aiming for a 35-degree incline, give or take. You lower yourself. The marble floor cools your palms. You wait. The emperor doesn't move. Behind him, two golden lions suddenly lift their heads. They roar. Your heart leaps before you realize they're automata, mechanical wonders of bronze and hydraulics, a favorite imperial party trick. A nearby tree of metal birds begins to sing. You're not in a court, you're in a machine built for awe. And the emperor, he finally nods. That's it. A single nod. It means, you may exist. Your lungs remember how to function. From that moment on, everything you do in the palace becomes a small act of survival. You're not allowed to lean on walls. You must never cross your arms. You sit only when told to, and even then, the position of your knees matters. The court runs on invisible rules that no one tells you directly, but that everyone expects you to know. A servant brings wine. You reach for it, but the eunuch's hand darts out too fast, too graceful. You're reminded that touching anything before the emperor does is forbidden. Instead, you wait. Time stretches. You can feel the sweat gathering behind your ears. Finally, the emperor lifts his cup. You follow suit, pretending you knew all along. It's said that visitors to the Byzantine court often returned home in tears, not from humiliation, but from sheer exhaustion. The ceremonies were endless: morning audiences, evening vespers, birthday feasts for saints you'd never heard of. Every movement choreographed, every phrase memorized. One misstep could cost you your reputation, your fortune, or your head. And yet, there's something hypnotic about it all. The Byzantines believed etiquette wasn't vanity, it was theology in motion. The emperor embodied heaven's order on earth. His court reflected celestial hierarchy. When you bowed to him, you weren't just honoring a ruler, you were reenacting the cosmos. But let's be honest, not everyone found comfort in that celestial logic. There were rebels who mocked it, generals who sneered at it, monks who wrote angry treatises claiming the emperor's court was more pagan than Christian. Historians still argue whether these rituals were truly sacred or just a very expensive form of imperial PR. As you're led from the throne room, your guide whispers about the Book of Ceremonies, a colossal manual compiled under Emperor Constantine VII. It detailed everything from how to greet ambassadors from Baghdad to how to hand the emperor a candle without committing a theological faux pas. The book ran to hundreds of pages. Imagine your office's employee handbook but with divine judgment attached. You pass into another hall, the Daphne Palace, where murals of victory shimmer under flickering lamps. The scent of burning myrrh clings to your clothes. You notice the servants never walk in straight lines, they move in slow arcs, a flowing choreography designed to mirror the palace's mosaics. Even the architecture obeys etiquette: corridors align with constellations, courtyards mimic scripture. You start to feel the pull of it, the rhythm, the ritual, the quiet power of repetition. You understand how someone could live here for years and forget what spontaneity even felt like. Then you catch sight of something odd, a servant kneeling in the corner, scrubbing a mosaic tile with what looks suspiciously like wine. He's whispering to it. Later, you'll learn he's polishing an image of the Virgin Mary, part devotion, part superstition. Some believed certain mosaics could hear confessions if you scrubbed them while whispering your sins. A strange custom, but it fits perfectly here where faith and formality blur until you can't tell one from the other. By nightfall, the palace glows like a lantern over the Bosporus. You stand at a balcony, watching torches line the sea walls. Below, the city hums a mixture of Greek prayers, merchant shouts, and the soft splash of oars. Above, the stars seem to pulse in rhythm with the palace's heartbeat. You realize you're inside a living organism, an empire sustained by ritual, hierarchy, and the illusion of eternal order. Every nod, every silence, every carefully folded hand is a cell in that organism. To break the etiquette is to break the body. You turn to leave the balcony, careful to step backward, never turning your back on the palace, not even its shadow. Somewhere deep within, the emperor still sits unmoving, mechanical lions roaring softly beside him, waiting for the next ceremony to begin. You wake before dawn, the palace already alive with whispers. Somewhere beyond your chamber, a bell chimes 3 soft notes, the signal that the emperor is awake. It's strange how the entire world inside these walls seems to inhale at once when he rises. Even the torches burn a little steadier. You're learning that nothing in the Byzantine court happens without choreography. Even waking up is a performance. You follow the scent of incense through narrow corridors lined with mosaics. Each tile gleams in the torchlight, like the scales of some golden serpent that coils endlessly around you. The scent is dizzying: sweet frankincense from Arabia, spiced resin from Ethiopia, and a hint of rose oil that clings to your sleeves. Somewhere, unseen servants adjust the curtains to let in just enough sunlight to create the proper glow for morning audiences. Nothing is left to chance. The palace isn't quiet, though it hums. The sound is low and constant: sandals brushing marble, silk swishing, the faint clink of jewelry. You turn a corner and nearly collide with a group of courtiers, each more elaborately dressed than the last. Their robes shimmer with embroidered crosses and tiny pearls. You realize quickly that in this world, fabric is a weapon. Silk, especially, is a kind of armor. Only the highest ranks wear the imperial weave, a blend so fine it almost floats. It's said that the Byzantines guarded their silk secrets with fanatical zeal. For centuries, only they knew how to cultivate silkworms. Historians still argue whether monks smuggled the first silkworm eggs out of China hidden in hollowed-out canes, or whether that's just a legend polished by envy. Either way, silk became the empire's quiet superpower: soft, shimmering, and worth more than any sword. You're ushered into the triclinos of the 19 couches, a ceremonial hall used for morning receptions. You take your place behind a mosaic line that gleams faintly in the morning light. That line is your social boundary. Step past it without permission, and you're not just rude, you're treasonous. The courtiers around you exchange glances so subtle you can barely catch them. Here, suspicion is the main currency. Every nod hides calculation, every smile weighs loyalty. One misplaced compliment can mark you as an ally or an enemy. A man beside you murmurs, "Don't move your eyes too much." They LOL think you're scheming. You freeze mid-breath. The irony, of course, is that everyone is scheming. The Byzantines elevated suspicion to an art form. It's the only way an empire this vast and brittle could survive. Across the room, eunuchs glide like ghosts. They're the emperor's most trusted servants, half priest, half spy. They maintain the choreography of the court, making sure no one forgets their place. One of them pauses near you, adjusting a candelabrum that doesn't need adjusting. He looks at you for half a second too long. It's a warning, you're being noticed. You remember the rule: never appear too confident, but never appear uncertain either. It's a delicate dance. The Byzantines loved that balance, that exact midpoint between reverence and pride. They called it euspia, pious moderation. You try to embody it now, standing still as a statue while your mind races. The emperor enters. No one looks up right away, that would be too eager. You hear the faint rustle of silk as everyone shifts just enough to face him. He moves like a shadow through golden light, escorted by guards wearing embossed armor that gleams with images of saints. The courtiers lower their eyes as he passes, murmuring blessings that sound rehearsed even in their sincerity. The emperor raises a hand. Instantly, the chamber stills. You can hear the flick of a candle wick. He begins to speak, not loudly, but clearly, each word weighed like a coin. You catch fragments: trade agreements, divine order, God's favor upon the city. The Byzantines loved weaving religion into everything. Every law, every ceremony, every greeting carried the weight of theology. And yet, beneath all that holiness, there's always politics. The emperor finishes his short address and gestures for a servant. A golden box is brought forward. Inside, rolled scrolls, decrees, appointments, or maybe dismissal orders disguised as promotions. You can't tell which. The courtiers murmur polite congratulations to whoever's name is called, but the smiles never reach their eyes. When your name isn't called, you feel the smallest relief. In Byzantium, being noticed is often more dangerous than being forgotten. After the audience, you're guided through a smaller corridor that leads toward the Empress's wing. The air here smells of jasmine and something sharper, vinegar, maybe. You notice how the walls narrow, forcing everyone to walk in single file. It's a subtle design choice, meant to ensure that no man ever walks beside the Empress without invitation. You catch a glimpse of her court through an archway: women in layered silk gowns, jeweled veils glittering like constellations. They speak softly, but their laughter carries power. Even the Empress's attendants are trained in etiquette so precise it borders on dance. One woman bows while walking backward, another adjusts her veil without ever touching it directly, tugging a hidden thread that lowers the fabric. You realize the women's etiquette mirrors the men's, just as rigid, just as dangerous. Only their weapons are smiles and secrets instead of swords. You continue on to the palace gardens, where a faint breeze stirs the leaves of cypress and laurel. You find a shaded alcove, and for the first time all morning, you can exhale. The gardens are the only place in the palace where silence feels natural. Birds flutter through marble fountains, and the scent of orange blossoms fills the air. But even here, the rules follow you. You can't sit unless seated higher than your inferior but lower than your superior. You can't turn your back on the statue of the Virgin near the fountain. And you definitely can't speak louder than the rustling of the leaves. You hear two voices nearby, young officials whispering behind a hedge. One says, "The emperor favors him this week." The other replies, "Then next week, he'll favor his executioner." The first laughs nervously, then stops. You don't have to see their faces to know they're serious. Historians still argue whether Byzantine paranoia was justified or self-inflicted. Maybe both. The empire had survived centuries of coups, assassinations, and theological feuds. The people who lasted longest weren't the strongest or the cleverest, they were the quietest. AB lands on your sleeve. You resist the urge to brush it away. Moving too suddenly here feels like an act of rebellion. You watch it crawl lazily across the silk, its tiny legs catching on the gold thread. Even nature seems to obey palace rhythm, slow, deliberate, unhurried. By noon, you return to the audience hall for the midday ceremony. Servants light new candles, their wax perfumed with cedar and amber. The emperor's dais gleams under shafts of light from a domed skylight. The scent of incense thickens again, so thick you can taste it. Someone coughs. Everyone pretends not to notice. The ritual begins anew, bows, gestures, whispered blessings. Every repetition reinforces the illusion of order. You start to see how it works, not as oppression, but as hypnosis. Etiquette keeps chaos at bay. The empire survives not by conquest anymore, but by continuity. And yet, there's a cost. You feel your individuality dissolving. You move, speak, and breathe in harmony with the court. You catch your reflection in a gilded bowl of water and barely recognize yourself. For a fleeting moment, you wonder what would happen if you simply walked out, ignored the bows, the nods, the endless rituals. Would the palace collapse? Would the emperor even notice? Probably not. That's the cruel genius of Byzantine etiquette. It makes everyone feel essential while ensuring no one truly is. As the ceremony ends, the emperor departs through a hidden doorway. The courtiers disperse in silence, each pretending to leave in a different direction but somehow always circling back to gossip in hushed tones. You linger for a moment longer, watching sunlight scatter across the mosaics like broken glass. You realize the Byzantines didn't just build a palace, they built a living myth. Every movement, every scent, every whispered phrase reinforces that myth. To live here is to surrender to it, willingly or not. And somewhere deep inside, beneath the layers of silk and suspicion, you admit it's beautiful. Terrifyingly beautiful. The palace changes after sunset. What had been a theater of gold and ceremony becomes a maze of murmurs. You walk through the same corridors, but now the mosaics seem to watch you. Candles flicker low, stretching shadows into strange shapes. You can almost hear the marble breathing. This is when the Byzantines truly come alive, not during audiences or processions, but in the quiet hours between them. Here, etiquette still rules, but its tone softens into something more intimate, more dangerous. The laughter is quieter. The greetings are warmer. And every conversation hides at least one layer of meaning beneath the words. You find yourself in the porphyry corridor, named for the deep purple stone that lines its walls. It's where the empire's whispers gather. The same purple once reserved for emperors now absorbs the secrets of those who serve him. Every polished surface seems to echo voices, some soft, some trembling, some too calm to be trusted. You pass two scribes pretending to discuss scripture. In reality, they're exchanging rumors about a general who may have grown too popular in Anatolia. A servant slips by with a tray of figs and almonds, listening more than she walks. You realize gossip here isn't idle, it's intelligence. Information is the only currency that doesn't lose value in the palace. You pause before a bronze door left slightly open. Inside, a cluster of courtiers whisper around a table. You catch phrases like the patriarch's disfavor and the empress's cousin. The Byzantines adored hierarchy so much that even rumors had their own ranking system. A scandal involving clergy, for instance, ranked higher than one involving soldiers. The juiciest of all involved relics or prophecies. Someone spots you. The room falls silent for a heartbeat. Then, one voice, smooth, amused, invites you in. "Come, friend," the man says. "No one gossips about you yet." You smile carefully, stepping inside. The speaker wears a robe embroidered with small silver eagles, each one a reminder that he is closer to the imperial family than you are. His tone is easy, but his eyes never stop measuring. "Did you hear," he begins, "that His Majesty sneezed twice during morning prayers?" You frown, unsure of the point. He grins. "Ah, but he didn't sneeze yesterday." Clearly, the angels disapprove of something. The others chuckle softly. You realize they aren't joking. In this palace, a sneeze could launch a theological debate. Historians still argue whether the Byzantines were genuinely superstitious or simply enjoyed turning trivialities into state secrets. Someone pours you wine. You sip it slowly, aware that taste itself is part of etiquette. Too much and you seem greedy, too little and you seem suspicious. The flavor is sharp, heavy with spice. The man beside you leans closer. "Never drink from the second cup," he whispers. "If someone wants you gone, they'll wait until then." You set your cup down immediately. He smiles. "Good. You're learning." You spend the next hour absorbing names, gestures, and hints, none of it direct, all of it vital. By the time you leave, your mind hums with more uncertainty than when you entered. That's the magic of Byzantine politics. You can never tell whether you've gained insight or just another layer of confusion. As you walk back through the corridors, you hear faint music, an instrument like a lyre, soft and wavering. You follow the sound until you reach a small courtyard lit by lanterns. There, a handful of courtiers recline on cushions, trading verses of poetry. It's oddly peaceful, even human. You listen as one woman recites a line about golden cages and invisible wings. The group applauds politely, but no one comments on what it really means. Everyone knows better than to speak too plainly. The Byzantines believed truth should always wear a mask. It wasn't deception, it was art. The empress herself was said to communicate with gestures rather than words, allowing interpretation to do the heavy lifting. That way, nothing she said could ever be used against her. You think about how this culture must have felt to live inside one where formality shields you from ruin, but also from honesty. Even friendship here feels scripted. And yet, you can't help admiring the elegance of it all. Every conversation is a miniature dance, every silence a brush stroke on the empire's great mural of caution. Later that night, you stand again on a balcony overlooking the Bosporus. The city below glows faintly, lanterns flickering like constellations. Somewhere beyond the palace walls, life continues without ceremony, merchants shouting, lovers whispering, priests chanting. But inside these walls, you're trapped in a dream of order and suspicion. A breeze stirs your robes. You wonder whether the emperor himself ever feels free, or if even he must follow the choreography that binds everyone else. After all, when you live in a palace made of etiquette, even the ruler becomes its prisoner. You hear a voice behind you, a eunuch, soft as silk. "Careful, my friend," he says. "The walls have ears." You glance at the stone around you. He isn't joking. The Byzantines were known to hide listeners behind screens, in alcoves, even within hollow columns. It's said one emperor once ordered holes drilled through floors so he could eavesdrop from below. Historians still debate whether that's true or just another story polished by fear. The eunuch gives a faint bow. "Sleep lightly," he says, and disappears down the hall. You stand there for a moment, staring out at the moonlit city, realizing that in this palace, even the night obeys protocol. Morning again, and the palace smells like honeyed bread, rose water, and nerves. Today, you're invited to dine in the emperor's presence, a privilege that sounds delightful until you realize most people who attend imperial banquets end up regretting it. Not always immediately, but eventually. The triclinos, the great dining hall, blazes with gold and glass. Rows of tables curve like crescent moons around a central dais. Musicians tune their lyres, servants glide like synchronized shadows. You take your place at a marble bench exactly where the eunuchs tell you to sit, not 1 inch closer or farther from the emperor's table. Seating here is politics in physical form. Your distance from the emperor says everything about your current standing. The emperor arrives to the sound of trumpets and naturally an organ. A Byzantine banquet isn't just a meal, it's a carefully staged piece of theater. Every course arrives to fanfare, every dish matched to a hymn. The emperor raises his goblet, and everyone follows in a single motion. You've learned by now, wait for the purple sleeve to move, then move yourself. Your first course, roasted peacock dusted with cinnamon and vinegar. It glistens beneath torchlight, looking far more majestic than edible. Someone once said Byzantine cuisine was designed more to impress than to nourish. You believe it. The emperor takes a delicate bite, and only then does the rest of the hall begin to eat. You chew slowly, trying to look serene rather than terrified. Across the table, a nobleman begins telling a story about a dream he had, an omen involving a white horse and a broken spear. Everyone listens politely, eyes darting toward the emperor for cues. He nods once. That means the dream is now officially significant. Within hours, half the court will be whispering that it foretells divine victory, or divine wrath. It's hard to tell which. You notice how no one ever speaks directly to the emperor. Instead, they address the air slightly beside him, as if his presence is too radiant to confront head-on. It's said that even ambassadors were instructed to deliver their speeches facing a curtain embroidered with his likeness rather than the man himself. Historians still argue whether this rule came from genuine reverence or strategic insulation just in case someone said something stupid. A servant refills your wine. You thank him softly, and he gives a barely perceptible nod. Everyone here communicates in micro-expressions, as if words are a luxury too risky to spend. You can't help thinking of how fragile this all feels, so much power balanced on such delicate manners. Then, without warning, the music stops. A plate clatters somewhere near the back. Every head turns. A servant kneels, trembling, as spilled wine seeps across the marble floor like blood. Silence. The emperor doesn't move. The eunuchs watch him, waiting for the smallest gesture. Finally, the emperor raises one finger and the music resumes instantly. The servant is led away, not roughly, but with a finality that chills you. You never see him again. You learn the lesson fast. In Byzantium, mercy is always ceremonial. The meal continues, each course stranger than the last, dates soaked in vinegar, fish carved into crosses, pastries shaped like doves. Between bites, musicians play slow, haunting melodies. You find yourself lulled, almost hypnotized, by the rhythm of it all. The banquet feels endless, like the empire itself, gorgeous, heavy, and faintly suffocating. At the emperor's command, a troupe of dancers enters, men in jeweled masks moving in perfect unison. They reenact a scene from some ancient victory, their steps sharp and deliberate. You realize this isn't entertainment. It's etiquette in motion, another layer of ritual designed to remind everyone that the empire endures, unchanged. When dessert arrives, honeyed figs served on golden plates, you're finally allowed to speak in low tones. Conversation hums through the hall like bees in a hive. A general near you whispers about a border skirmish. A bishop mutters about heresy. And someone quietly jokes that the figs might be poisoned. You laugh too loudly, then immediately regret it. Humor here is a weapon with a sharp edge. Still, there are lighter moments. A eunuch corrects a nobleman's posture with the faintest touch, and the table stifles polite giggles. The emperor himself seems almost amused, his lips twitching beneath the candlelight. For a heartbeat, the room feels human again. But as the banquet ends, the illusion fades. The emperor rises, and everyone bows low enough to make the joints ache. He leaves without a word. Only when the doors close behind him do people exhale, like divers breaking the surface after too long underwater. You stand slowly, your knees stiff. The hall is quieter now, the golden plates cleared, the candles burning low. Someone murmurs that this was one of the emperor's gentler evenings. You don't want to imagine what the other kind looks like. As you step into the corridor, you catch the faint echo of laughter from the distant kitchen's servants gossiping about the guests, mimicking their bows, mocking their solemn voices. You almost envy them. They live outside the cage of ceremony, free to laugh at those trapped inside. You make your way toward your quarters, passing frescoes of saints watching from the walls. Their painted eyes seem to follow you. You wonder if even they're tired of the performance. And yet, beneath your exhaustion, there's fascination. You can feel the strange pull of this world, the precision, the beauty, the quiet terror of never knowing whether you've pleased or doomed yourself with a single gesture. The Byzantines didn't invent etiquette, but they turned it into something close to religion. As you reach your door, a eunuch appears again, silent as mist. He bows slightly and says, "Tomorrow, you'll attend the emperor's procession." His tone gives nothing away. "Rest well," he adds. You close the door behind you, lean against the cool wall, and let out a breath you didn't realize you'd been holding. Somewhere beyond the marble, the city sleeps under moonlight. Inside, you feel the pulse of the empire beating unmeasured, magnificent, and utterly merciless. Morning in Constantinople begins with the sound of bells deep, deliberate, echoing across the city like a heartbeat. You rise before dawn, dressing in the ceremonial garments provided by the palace attendants, embroidered linen, soft leather sandals, and a thin cloak dyed with imitation purple. Real purple, of course, is forbidden unless you're born to it. Even imitation feels like borrowing a dream. The eunuch who guided you yesterday reappears, his expression unreadable as ever. "Follow closely," he says, and you do, down corridors that twist like thoughts, past marble statues of long-dead emperors who never stopped watching. Outside, the hippodrome stretches before you, vast and humming with anticipation. The sky glows pale gold as thousands gather in the stands: merchants, monks, noble women with veiled faces, soldiers gleaming in their bronze and steel. The air smells of roasted almonds, incense, and sweat. You can feel the excitement vibrating through the crowd, that strange blend of faith and fear that always follows the emperor. Somewhere nearby, a choir begins to sing in low, mournful harmony. It sounds like both a prayer and a warning. Then, a distant horn answers. The crowd stirs. The emperor's procession begins. First come the standard bearers, carrying silk banners embroidered with crosses, eagles, and the golden initials of Christ. Behind them march the guards, tall men in polished armor, faces expressionless beneath their plumed helmets. They move in perfect rhythm, each step a declaration of power. Next, the clergy appear, swinging censers that leave trails of smoke like holy ghosts. The air thickens with the smell of myrrh and burnt resin. You can barely see through the haze, but you catch flashes of jewels, gilded helmets, and the shimmer of purple fabric. And then there he is. The emperor. Seated on a throne mounted atop a platform carried by 12 men, he glides forward like a vision from another world. Sunlight catches on his robes, so thick with gold thread that they seem made of light itself. His crown, encrusted with pearls and sapphires, glitters with almost unbearable brightness. His expression is calm, distant, and entirely unreadable. The people fall to their knees. The noise of the city melts into one long breath of reverence. For a moment, you understand why they call him the living icon. He isn't a man in this moment, he is a symbol stitched out of faith and fear, an embodiment of divine order. The Byzantines didn't just believe their emperor ruled by God's will, they believed he was a piece of that will, walking among them. As the procession passes, petals rain from the balconies above. Children shout blessings. The emperor raises his hand in benediction, and the crowd roars not wildly, but in a strange, synchronized chant. The sound rolls through the hippodrome like thunder shaped into prayer. You stand frozen, watching the golden platform glide past, and yet, beneath the awe, you feel something else, a shiver of unease. There's too much perfection here, too much control. Every movement rehearsed, every emotion choreographed. Even worship has been engineered into spectacle. The eunuch beside you whispers, "Magnificent, isn't it?" You nod. But you wonder, magnificent for whom? The emperor disappears through the great bronze gates of the august Ion, his image swallowed by the palace once more. The crowd remains kneeling long after he is gone, as if afraid to rise too soon. Only later, as the streets empty, does the world feel real again. The merchants return to shouting, the pigeons descend to pick at crumbs, and the city exhales. Constantinople goes back to pretending it's ordinary. You're led to a shaded courtyard behind the palace, where the marble glows faintly pink under the morning sun. Servants bring water scented with mint. You drink, grateful, though your hands still tremble slightly. Nearby, a scholar sits reading aloud from a scroll lines of ancient prophecy about kingdoms rising and falling. You listen absently until he says, "Every empire believes itself eternal until the moment after it isn't." The words linger. That night, as you prepare to leave the palace, you glance one last time toward the imperial dome gleaming above the city. It looks eternal indeed, vast, serene, God-touched. But you've seen what eternity costs: silence, obedience, rituals so tight it strangles breath. And yet, you can't deny its beauty. The Byzantines built a world that glittered even as it cracked. They turned faith into architecture, power into ceremony, and fear into art. You walk away knowing you've witnessed something that will never exist again, not quite. In centuries to come, travelers will stand among the ruins of these walls and whisper that Byzantium was a dream. But you'll remember it differently. You'll remember the shimmer of gold dust in torchlight, the echo of sandals on marble, the way the emperor's gaze could freeze the air. You'll remember that beneath the splendor lived people, servants, dancers, scholars, soldiers, each performing their part in an empire of endless choreography. And you'll remember how easily awe can turn into obedience. The bells toll once more as night settles over the Bosphorus. You turn toward the harbor, the salt wind on your face. Behind you, the city glows, 1,000 flickering lights reflected in the water like a galaxy fallen to earth. Byzantium sleeps, dreaming of eternity. But somewhere, deep inside you, a whisper remains: even gold fades when no one dares to touch it. The marble fades first. The light that once shimmered on gold mosaics slowly dulls to gray. You stand at the palace gates, and the city around you exhales a long, tired sigh that drifts across centuries. The echoes of the emperor's procession are gone now. The streets that once pulsed with incense and song lie quiet, their grandeur thinned into memory. A cat pads along the old stones, the last guardian of what used to be power. You can almost hear the whispers of court officials, eunuchs, and servants, their voices carried by the sea breeze. Their names are lost, but their rituals remain embedded in every royal bow, every careful silence that came after Byzantium fell. If you close your eyes, the world softens. The clatter of armor becomes the rhythm of your breathing. The distant hymns melt into the low hum of the night. What was once ceremony now feels like a heartbeat, slowing, steady, gentle, timeless. The Byzantines built a world meant to last forever. And in a way, it did not in marble or empire, but in how we still crave beauty, order, reverence. The kind that glows quietly, even in the dark. So take a slow breath. Let the weight of history drift off your shoulders. The palace gates are closing now, not with thunder, but with a whisper. You made it through Byzantium's golden labyrinth, through all its splendor and silence, and you survived every bow, every rule, every hidden smile. Now, all that remains is peace. The lights dim. The marble cools. The empire sleeps. And so, perhaps, should you.